That was funny. I went into the vape shop, and there were some customers in there talking with the folks behind the counter, and they were getting into a little debate on Horizon versus the new Zelda. Such a silly. Overall, it's such a silly concept to argue over those two things, but I'm not even going to dive into that. You're getting two Game of the Year contenders within the same week, essentially, and instead of celebrating it, we got folks out here trying to argue which one's better. Just shut up and play your damn games. Anyway, so I put The Last Guardian down, and the other reason is my wife wanted to be a part of the Trico journey, and so I was playing that with her. With the shitty thing about that, I mean, there's a lot of great that comes from experiencing games with somebody else, or more importantly, your loved ones, because you feed off each other's energy, right? But the downside, though, is like her available times to game are just too far and few between. It's irritating. Like, oh, well, tonight's The Bachelor, so we're gonna watch The Bachelor instead. I'm like, look here, woman. Like, The Last Guardian puts any and all Bachelor shows to shame. Like, what do you? And you know this. Like, what is wrong? Okay, sorry, not tonight. Teen Mom 2s, yay! Like, whatever, man. Like, I'm just trying to play some damn games, and so like I'm stuck not being able to play it because she's got all these shit shows to watch. Anyway, so I started diving into Horizon, and here's the thing. Out of everybody I game with online and stuff, everybody for the most part was super hyped for Horizon. And the fact that it was an open world RPG, and my ADD and getting stuck in like, oh, look at this stick, let's go look at that, and then like I just never end up progressing through the story. And ultimately what happens is, before I know it, I'm several hundred hours, not 100, that's an exaggeration, I'm several hours in to any said RPG open world game, and I've done all these side quests and a bunch of erroneous bullshit that accomplishes nothing, and I get burned out on it and turned off and never finished the damn game. And so, and the other side of it is, like with RPGs, for me, one of the biggest turnoffs is inventory management, and I just have such a hard time with that. And anyway, so I wasn't very excited for it, and the game, I purchased it, I guess I pre-ordered it around December time frame, I guess, and it's just been sitting there dormant, and then the countdown starts. So it starts downloading on Saturday midday, and then the launch is Tuesday, right? So it downloads, and then it completes, and when it completed, it alerted me, and I was playing The Last Guardian, I was playing The Last Guardian, and so it kind of like, when it chimed that, informing me that it was just downloaded, I had a feeling like a fluttery in my chest, and I was like, ooh, wait a minute, that's new. I wasn't really that excited for it. And the main reason why I bought it more than anything is kind of like I'm a big fan of Guerrilla, and I was a big fan of what they were doing with the game. Like, I have a lot of respect for like what goes into the video game creation, and I'll dive more into that here in a little bit. So it was more about them taking really precautionary measures to make sure that they didn't have a lot of, or any for that matter, shortcomings when it came to going from a first-person shooter to a open-world RPG. And so I like the fact that they're being proactive on that front. And the game could have launched and had a lot of these issues that other games might have already mastered, be it Rockstar, Bethesda, whatever, because they've been doing RPGs and open world for so long. And it would have been excusable because they, like, hey, yeah, this is their first shot at going from, first person to third person, from first to third, and on top of that, and going into open world. And so it would have been understandable, but they didn't even want to do that. They took it a step further, and they're like, okay, we know our shortcomings, so we're going to go out and hire the best of the best. And so they went to Fallout devs, they went to CD Projekt Red devs to help create this vision that they had and ensure that the gameplay and the mechanics would all work together. And they covered every single aspect, every single detail masterfully. And so for that, I shouldn't say it that way because I didn't know that at the time, but I knew that that's what they were doing. and because of that, I felt like I needed to support it. On top of the fact that it's no secret that I'm a huge fan of the experiences that PlayStation puts out. So I just felt like I needed to do my due diligence and buy that game, sort of like I did with Journey, The Last Guardian, Until Dawn. Second Son's another example of a franchise that I did not like, but I liked what was going into it. I liked the overall vision, and so I went ahead and bought it, knowing that I'd probably just think it was mediocre. And so I do that a lot with first party titles, including Xbox titles that I purchased that I was not really that into, like Sunset Overdrive. I was just like completely turned off by, and thankfully, whenever I got my hands on it after I bought it, it blew me away. That game was fantastic. Another game that I was planning on getting through the Xbox before I got rid of it was the Cuphead, knowing good damn and well I was going to hate that game because it was a platformer. It's hard as shit, and I suck at those. But I was going to buy it just for the obvious. That game needs to be supported. Cuphead looks simply amazing. So anyway, let's go back into what I was talking about with Horizon. Once it started the countdown, my excitement started to get started to elevate, and then through social media and everybody else's hype, it started bleeding onto me. And once it got to the hour mark, right, it's counting down the hours, it was getting to an all-time high, and it was fun because I sat down the last 3 minutes before it was ready to be started, which I guess it was 11 o'clock at night on Monday. And it was when it unlocked. But when it got down to 20 seconds, I was counting down out loud, getting super hype. And then the game started. And it was Sony Presents. And every time you see Sony Presents or whatever, that black screen with the white lettering, your heart starts going. You start to feel it. Because when Sony puts their name on it, 9 times out of 10, that joint's about to be lit. You're about to be excited. It's going to be a good game. And then it rolls, Guerrilla, and then the game starts, and then it does the whole presentation, and you go into the whole backstory, and the environments are hitting you from all angles. You're just like, what is happening? There's ants over there. There's light bleed through on that tree over there. Look at the different colors in the sky. You're just blown away. My biggest complaint with the games thus far, and I'm level 22 right now in the game, is I can't go 3 minutes without options photo mode, and then you spend a whole bunch of time in photo mode. I just keep taking screenshots because it's it never gets old. You're just constantly finding this beautiful scene that you feel like you need to capture and then share later, and then whenever you share it with your friends who are also playing it, they will share back, and it's this discussion of not only the game and what the world presents and how the characters are interacting with the environment and the whole thing that you normally do with games. It's not only that, but it's also just how the environment tells its own story. And here's the thing, that I find that's really hard for developers to capture, especially. Damn sir, are you in that much of a hurry? My God. Anyway, whenever you with open world games, they tend to not feel alive, and you hear that a lot. Watch Dogs, the first one, for instance. The city was there, it just didn't feel very alive. One of the top developers out there, and I think they hold the key to success when it comes to our open world, is Rockstar, and they truly show you what it means to make an open world game that feels alive. And for instance, with Grand Theft Auto, and I know there's a lot of people that love it. Obviously, it's the highest selling game. It's nuts. But one of the things that really kind of resonate with me about Grand Theft Auto is how, with or without you, the player, the participant, there in that world, it's alive. Okay, so meaning, even if you were not there, you were just in spectator mode, and you're just a visible being up in the sky. The world continues to move forward. I was telling a friend of mine who's not very familiar with the Grand Theft Auto franchise like I am. I was online on Grand Theft Auto 5, and my character was on his balcony in the apartment complex, and he was just kind of out there, and I had to walk away for a little bit in real life, came back. When I came back, a wreck had just taken place at an intersection down below. And when I looked at it, I focused in on it because I don't know what drew my eye to it. I think it was gunfire. They were shooting each other. So one of the guys that got in the wreck, it was like a T-bone, was behind his car shooting at the other guy. The other guy was down, like cowered down behind the car on his phone. And before you know it, there was two gangs on the other side of them shooting at one another. So apparently, from what I could gather, they were both opposite gang members or rival gangs. They started firing on one another, and then you had the police start coming in, and then the SWAT team, and then the military, and all of a sudden it was like a war zone that I was just watching. That had nothing to do with any other players, real life, online players. It was all AI living out their lives in this game, and there's something to be said about that, because when that sort of thing is taking place outside of whatever you're doing, whatever objectives you're trying to accomplish, everything just feels so together and so alive. And Horizon captures that. And I will say this, Horizon even does it in a way that I don't even think Rockstar does, or at least not in Grand Theft Auto. It has it. It's just not as in your face as Horizon does it. And I think some would argue that Red Dead Redemption does this. I see that, but it doesn't do it to this degree. Now, what am I talking about? The environment itself has its own life, its own presence. Take the AI out, take the dinosaurs out, the robot animals, take the other factions out, take all the people, all the moving things. Okay, just the environment alone. Like, pretend like you're playing Myst now, right? Where you're not a person, you're just a camera, spectator mode. That world has a certain presence to it. The wind has a presence to it. The weather effects have a presence to it, where you feel like it's actually alive. It's just amazing. Like the environments are telling their own story. And to dive back into what I was saying earlier about what was going into this game as far as development, they were crashing the Decima engine. They were having a really hard time with it because it was not designed, or they designed it to be scalable, but it wasn't scaling to where they wanted it to be. And so they were having all kinds of issues. They had to gut it out and redo it. And what was cool about the day and night cycle and the weather systems in Horizon is that they actually put in a mathematical equation to work it all. So like the actual clouds will accumulate, get thick, get dark, then it'll rain. But depending on the temperature on ground level, all the way up to the clouds, will dictate whether it's rain, sleet, or snow, or fog, or whatever. It brings all that into the equation. The way the lights bleed, or the source of light, whether it's the sun or the moon or whatever, fire, the way it bleeds through the environment and the objects within the environment, all of that plays into that presence of liveliness that is just really hard to capture on these amazing screenshots that you're seeing people post online. It's just, the game is so well done. This story, I heard somebody today, MVP Magazine, I'm halfway through his impressions on it so far, and it's pretty spot on. I actually can't, Grimpachi's another one that I watched that he did a really good first impressions, and they'll talk about their perception of the negatives or whatever, and you can't really argue about any of it or argue against. They're all pretty accurate. Everything is really there. I know Grimpachi discovered that there's a flaw in the sense that when you're looking out over the horizon, no pun intended, it's amazing looking, like just aesthetically amazing. But then you look directly down, if you're higher up on like a mountain or something, and the textures and stuff that are like real kind of like faded, if you will. Like probably, I guess if you had to say like because it's dynamic resolution, probably like a 720p or something. While that is very much a thing that's in the game, for me personally, I'm playing on the PlayStation 4 Pro. I don't have 4K TV, nor do I have HDR. So I'm just running the super sampling, which for those of you that are not aware of what that is, super sampling is when you take a 4K image or a higher resolution image and then compress it down to 1080p, from what I can gather is just a much better picture fidelity than what just standard native 1080p is. So I'm playing with that, and I don't have that same issue. If I'm looking out over the horizon, it looks the same way that it does below me. So I guess maybe that's OG PlayStation issue.